if you're giving them an open problem, the main difficulty is that the problem is open, and since no one have already solved it, you have no idea how difficult the problem may be. And this is what makes working with students actually really helpful for one's scientific career. He has the ability to explore additional niches of his own research, and he has the ability to probe additional fields with the help of students. This is also his main responsibility. He just can't throw a student who has done nothing wrong in a theory. He has absolutely no chance to do something for 6 weeks. Therefore, one both gains additional purely scientific opportunities, but also learns a specific type of responsibility towards the young students. And within the last several years, I've been trying to achieve both of these, hopefully with some success. Now, on the topic, I will speak about the Science Fair Evaluation Framework, which was created not to evaluate the quality of science fairs, but to evaluate the impact of science fairs. And, well, then some remarks and results from this framework. First, what is science fair? Science fair, usually when we define it, we show a lot of pictures of students in front of their projects and so on, but here I'll cheat a little bit because I suppose that Jenny will show at least a few such pictures, and I'll found my talk on her pictures. Remember those students in front of their posters, and Raina and Roman with their slightly doggish type of how is this called, ribbons that they were given for their achievements at Intel ISTEP. Well, this is a science fair, a large event where students show their own research, their own... Is this working, by the way?
Yes.
Wonderful. I was not entirely sure. Where they show their research, their innovations to the broad public and to a jury which selects the best from them at the current moment, because we never know how those science fair participants will develop in a month, not to mention in 10 years. This is a science fair. Science fairs have been with us, depending on the definition, either from the beginning of the 20th century or from the middle of the 20th century, but they have been with us for long in really different ways. One may not always have a stand and a poster. We can call a lot of the events that the High School Students Institute in Mathematics and Informatics holds science fairs, even though students present there as a 15 or 20-minute talk, not as a poster sometimes. And these people who work on these science fairs have always been extremely confident about the impact these scientific competitions for students have. However, it turns out that until recently there wasn't an initiative to actually measure the impact, so we can convince people from other fields, from the stakeholders, from the local authorities, from different foundations, that what we do really has an impact. And that's how the Science Fair Evaluation Framework, an international project which now covers 10 different European countries, was born. In a minute, I will speak about what it found out and what are the ideas of improving and making science fairs even better, even more helpful for the education in the STEM field and the education in general. What are the aspects of the science fair? Of course, it is a scientific contest for students, this goes without saying, but it also is a networking event, and I need to emphasize that this is the actual most important part. The networking between students, researchers, between people from the industry, and so on. This allows many new partnerships, many new research projects to be born, and this sometimes surpasses several times the importance of a simple award. Therefore, it should never be forgotten, and it is no wonder that in the recent years, many science fairs have backed down from some of the competitional events in favor of networking events and presentation events. Last but not least, the science fairs are a showcase opportunity for different people and different companies from the business and the industry in particular to show their projects, to show their products, to show their initiatives for supporting young researchers and young talented engineers. Just a couple of examples how big can some science fairs be. Intel ISTEP, which is an event for 1 week, has more than 1,700 participants. And QED'2014 in Germany has several stages, which cover more than 10,000 participants. That's a lot. That's why we need to figure out what's the impact on these 10,000 people. And that's why several countries, including Bulgaria, started to participate in the science fair evaluation framework. It started with its pilot just with 3 countries in 2013, and in 2014 we already had 10 countries. The event, which was analyzed in Bulgaria, was the spring conference of the High School Students Institute. And we have very optimistic results after this. Let me show you the total numbers in Europe. About 850 students, about 250 teachers. They were asked several questions in separate questionnaires in 4 different sections. Demographics, which goes without saying. By the way, the number of girls and the number of boys is equal, so let's cut with this thing. The impact of the science fairs on their careers, the support they have received, and the sustainability and motivation of the participants. What we found can be covered in about 20 or so pages. I can provide this to those of you who are interested. But some of the findings are, as I said, equal numbers of males and females, both students and teachers, by the way. But at the European level, we have 76% of participants first-timers, and at least 4% veterans who have been to 3 or more science fairs. 88% of the participants would repeat, and approximately the same number would recommend to friends. This goes without saying that a science fair that gains popularity can pretty much, for a small amount of time, within several years, grow exponentially. This is very important. Regrettably, 70% of the students in Europe are at age 17+, which comes to show that, regrettably, the science fairs in Europe usually gets 11th, 12th grade at the high school. I should mention that in Bulgaria things are a little bit different. We get, thankfully, to a large degree of the High School Students Institute, the students earlier. And not 4, but 40% of our students have been to 3 or more such events. However, this is not the case in the whole Europe. Also, something to be noted. Only 13% of these students have been to internships. Only 13, while 2/3 of them, 64, are likely to study something in the STEM field and proceed in the STEM field. 2 of every 3 science fair participants will become someone who fills a spot in the STEM field. And by 2020, within Europe, there are going to be about 2 million unfilled places in the STEM field. Technology, education, research, and so on and so forth. This is how important it is for us to support science fair events and youth science events in general. Motivation I can skip because there was nothing really surprising in the motivation here, but I will accent on a couple of difficulties: obtaining materials and obtaining funding, as well as the support from stakeholders, but I think we all agree on that. So, how we can improve the current state, even though I must say I'm quite optimistic about the current state, because science fairs are going strong and the impact of them is pretty much confirmed. First, we can migrate from a single event to a series of events, because unlike Bulgaria, here I'm giving Bulgaria as a good example, which can be a bit surprising for someone. Unlike Bulgaria, many countries have only a single science fair event per year. Here we have about 5. And this really helps the student to improve their experience. So, there should be migration towards several connected events where students can showcase their projects. And we should migrate to multi-level events. We need school fairs, we need city fairs, we need events on a national level. Also, there is a lot of space in improving the communication with business and industry. There should be work done towards creating more internship places for high school students. And there should be more joint projects and initiatives between specialized high schools and different entities in the industry. Moreover, it's the high schools who should be encouraged to search such projects. Of course, other than us, we should also try to pair good practices in high school with good practices in industry. Last but not least, it turns out there is no handbook, nothing that helps high schools, even high schools with really high achievements, to search help with the industry, nothing to guide them. There's just the single ingenious code. Ingenious is part of scientific, which is currently being developed, and it is boggled with technicalities like how many students to have in one room, and whether or not to make branding. Sorry. There are also 2 different aspects in which we may be able to seek improvements. First, this is the partnership with the local authorities. It goes really well with the ambition to create multi-level fairs, because city fairs might be an event which the local authorities are willing to support, and there should be an increased media coverage, because only 20% of the respondents in the science fair evaluation framework mentioned that the local and the national medias were of any help at all. Not every publicity is good publicity. We heard today from Lyubov Kostova that the first actual event on science journalism is conducted today in Bulgaria. Hey, it's about time. We should seek for meaningful partnership with media that are more mature, more specialized, and can provide a veritable image of scientific development of the students. Of course, there should be also a lot more emphasis on helping the students with their presentation abilities, and this is what we have been working a lot on lately. With this, I'd like to thank you for your attention and give the microphone back.
Thank you very much to Mr. Delchev. Questions? Please.
So, thank you. First of all, congratulations for the excellent English and the very interesting presentation. So I would like to ask one more general question about what's your impression about such kind of scientific fairs by means of their usefulness? Is the very preparedness for the fair important more than the real participation as a personal impression or the networking? So could you share something around this?
It is my opinion that the most useful part for the students is the actual networking. Therefore, even if we can create events without a competitive part, just conferences, summer schools, poster sessions for students, where they can meet with universities, with people from the industry willing to give scholarships, this is already useful enough. There are very few students at a high level who are motivated by the competitional part. And this is supported also by the results of the evaluation framework too. The biggest driving force behind the students' participation in such an event is their creativity and their willingness to be creators and to be, so to say, their own leaders. That their willingness to do something as a researcher or as an engineer as opposed to do something for homework. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Delchev. Please. One more question, please.
Natalia Liteva, America for Bulgaria Foundation. I'd like to go back to the impact that you measured through the framework. I think part of the impact would have to do with increasing the broad base of the pool of the students who could go into and show an interest in STEM subjects. As to whether or not the framework catches some of that would be interesting. More importantly, would be what can be done, what do you think can be done for us to spur interest among a higher number of students who would then go on to participate in the science fairs and overall in the STEM area. Thanks.
I see. These are two questions which both deserve certain attention. First of all, whether or not the framework catches the widespread with students. Within the framework, there is one really large competition. This is the Dutch competition in Espoo, and from next year there will be also the Jugendforst competition. They enjoy rather widespread attention from students of very different backgrounds. There are also several smaller competitions which are very focused. We are just in the middle. The spring conference of the High School Students Institute is number 5 in terms of participants from 10 competitions. And if we analyze the results from separate competitions separately, which will be done in the future, for now due to really small numbers in certain fairs, which gives to large statistical errors, it is not and it's not public. But if you analyze separately, you will see how it is the motivating factor between the students is not different. It is just that in certain schools, like for example in Bulgaria, the mathematical high schools, there are more students inclined and willing to do research rather than in students without such specialization. But the driving force between the students from the specialized schools, and the driving force behind the students from other schools where maybe there is just a single student is more or less the same. So the motivation isn't different, it is a matter of just reaching to those students, not motivating them in a different way. Your second question.
What can be done?
What can be done? Two things. The multi-level events, organizing regional, citywide events, and which of course means working better with the local authorities and working better with the media. We need to be able to reach more students via modern medias, including internet. I think this is what can we do most quickly.
Thank you very much. The discussion will continue in our coffee breaks.